Welcome to another episode of Rectec Reels. I'm Hannah McQuarner, the Commercial Success Manager here at Rectec. Joining me today is Tom from Pinpoint. We're going to be talking about all things onboarding. So Tom, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Tom Hacquoil, the founder and CEO of Pinpoint. We're an ATS based here in the UK. We've been around about 7 years. About 750 customers split between the UK, the US, and about 60 other countries. And yeah, we try and do things a little bit different. We're focused very much on helping kind of large organizations with complex hiring needs, make them much easier to manage at scale.
Happy to have you. So I think it's safe to say that you are an industry expert. So with that in mind, I think with all things recruitment, there's lots of words kind of flying around that tend to mean different things for different people. So if we kind of get to the nitty-gritty of onboarding, how would you define onboarding?
Yeah, surprisingly difficult question to answer, right? I think we speak to lots of people. Contextually, we have an onboarding product, right? So I get to speak to people and learn from all the time. I think everybody defines this stuff slightly different, and the start and finish kind of comes at different points. I think for us, and maybe for the purpose of the conversation today, we'll kind of define it as the time between offer acceptance date and the individual start date, and sort of use that as like the baseline. But just important to note that everybody seems to think of it as a slightly different.
Fab, perfect. Thanks so much. So with that in mind, obviously you've got an onboarding product, so you'll have seen a really holistic view of the market and how onboarding is done right, but also not so well. So with that in mind, you're seeing many mistakes. What do you think that can actually be done to improve that onboarding experience?
Look, I think if we start with the mistakes, I think the reality is that we would think of onboarding often as like the forgotten part of the process, right? I think what we see super commonly is like there's a very defined ownership structure around recruitment, typically sat within TA or talent acquisition. There's then this very defined part of the life cycle, kind of post-hire, that sits with the HR team, owning employment and everything kind of beyond the start. But there's this kind of purgatory bit in the middle that often gets forgotten about. And I think that's obviously super bad for both candidate and for the team, right? And I think what we see happen in this sort of uncomfortable bit in the middle is loads of painful admin, right? And people have put tools in place to simplify the recruitment process and allow them to do that efficiently. We find there's a lot of pain in onboarding, and the level of maturity and often very established organizations on their onboarding side is very, very low. And then importantly, and actually, to be honest, the reason we built an onboarding solution in the first place a couple of years ago was we care a lot about candidate experience, and we had clients who were very proud of the candidate experience they were offering at recruitment, but then they were getting candidate feedback that it was just dropping off a cliff the second they accepted their offer, because it went from this kind of very intentional process to basically, here's 50 forms to fill in and don't talk to us until they're done. And I think there's an opportunity on both sides, right? One, significantly improve the candidate experience and that kind of efficiency at start. And then two, massively streamline the efficiency of the team that's actually gathering often a heck of a lot of complex documentation. And so, yeah, we just don't see people invest enough energy in getting that stuff right. And we're seeing that change now, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think back to onboarding experiences I've had way back when, I think that's the most important time, right, to keep that candidate engaged. That's when dropout can tend to be pretty high, especially now when candidates are accepting lots of offers, and just a bit of a weird time. So the forms, let's be honest, are not always the funnest part as the candidate. You've got to keep them warm, and it's crazy to think people are looking at their recruitment process and thinking, oh, there's some dropout going on here, why? And it's like, come on, you just want to shake them. So with that in mind, what advice would you give somebody looking to improve their onboarding experience?
Yeah, for sure. I think one is like actually map out what you're doing currently, right? And that's a surprisingly obvious statement, but like understand each of the kind of hoops that you need your candidates to jump through, and also be cognizant of the fact that it wouldn't be uncommon for an organization at scale to have tens or in some cases even hundreds of different onboarding flows, depending on the geography, the type of hire, the type of individual that's being hired, the type of role they're doing, etc. And so like actually map that process out, right? And I think it's important to do that because you understand quite how much is happening between that sort of, we would call it from yes to desk, right? And so I think that's step one. I think step two is like understand where you can automate and template things, right? And so again, like this is super obvious, but actually the vast majority of that process is just extremely repeatable. And so if you can work out like what can be done without manual intervention, start there and digitize that and make that easier for yourself, right? Because clearly, if you can handle more candidates at volume, everybody's happier. Allows you to spend more time doing the stuff that actually does need a human touch, which is where the actual value is, right? I think beyond that, Once you've done the sort of very basic stuff and you've used an onboarding solution, or you're just kind of automating things within existing systems, then you can start doing the nice stuff or the fluffy stuff or the fun stuff that actually makes a difference to the candidate, right? So think about, what does the experience of that portal look like, if there is one, right? Does it kind of mirror the quality and caliber of the careers site and the candidate experience you've offered today? Think about what information candidates might want to see between yes to desk. Things like, is there a buddy that they can be assigned? What documentation might they be able to pre-read in advance? What should they know about the people that they're working with? So we do a thing, for example, called readmes, which is like a key thing, but essentially every member of the team writes like answers to a couple of questions about who they are, what their working style is, what their background is. And we send those to new joiners before they start, so that they have a sense of the folks they're going to be working with and what that experience is going to be like. Are there little opportunities with things like social media or with swag or with other things, just to kind of create a bit of warmth in that journey? And as you say, keep people engaged. I think it's really important to note that, like, especially through COVID, we work with a lot of high volume industries, think like retail, logistics, transportation, hospitality. Those folks were seeing people accept offers and never turn up to work.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't giving them an experience that kept them engaged and kept them warm. And especially in places like the UK, where notice periods are often significant, you've got a real job to do to make sure that that candidate is being kept excited, right? And so, yeah, like, it's really simple stuff, but I think my worry is if you go too far too quickly, you miss the important stuff at the beginning, right? So sort of start there. And I think as you get those foundational bits in line, then what we advise people to do as they kind of progress through this onboarding maturity scale is think about, how can you offer a slightly different experience to different folks? And so you're going to start with this kind of one size fits all approach. But once you've got that nailed, can you then start saying, hey, well, I'm going to offer my engineers a slightly different onboarding experience to my marketing folks because they expect and want different things? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some key points to take away there is personalize as much as you can. Be aware of making candidates feel like a commodity, but also automate your processes, right? That's one of the reasons people bring tech in, because they want to work a little bit smarter, but be aware that what the implications that can have, it can often do a little bit more harm than good. So you need people like yourselves and various other onboarding tools that can come in and kind of help you shape that process. So thanks so much for kind of giving us that insight into onboarding, and hopefully you'll have a lot of recruiters shaking their heads thinking, right, well, how can we make this better? So if you're watching this and you're in the market for a new ATS or CRM, then do take advantage of our unique and fee-free comparison tool, Rectec Compare. If you are also looking to just build out your tech stack with any complementary tech, then be sure to check out our tech marketplace at rectec.io. But thank you so much for joining me today, Tom, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.